Tuesday, June the 3rd. That's the day Ohioans go to the polls to decide a number of important issues, as well as dividing up delegates to the Democratic and Republican conventions. You want to stay on top of the statewide vote, as well as how the important local issues are doing, like the Metro Park levy and maternal health ordinance. I'm Phyllis Quayle. Randy Price and I will be bringing you major reports from the Board of Elections at 6 and 11 p.m., along with updates throughout the evening. And, of course, regional reports from Jim Mangle. So to stay on top of the Ohio primary, stay in touch with 13 News.
Sports tip tonight at 6 on 13 Nightly News.
This is no ordinary bag of groceries. This bag is filled with cost-cutter savings from Kroger. Only Kroger gives you warehouse low prices in a full-service food store. And behind Kroger's warehouse low prices stands the Kroger unconditional guarantee of quality. Kroger's guaranteed quality and cost-cutter prices. Together, they're unbeatable. At Kroger, 87 cents every day. $1.99 every day. $1.37 every day. And 69 cents every day.
Sandman Sleep Shop's new chair center features Lazy Boy, Berkline, and Burris chairs at 40% savings. Buy this $455 Lazy Boy for only $268.
You're going to vote. You have to applaud. No. You say you'll vote. 54% of the people eligible voted in '76 in the presidential election, which is not funny. And it's our country, and it's really not, can you complain if you don't vote? One person who's more than just a little discouraged by that low figure is our guest today. And he's got some help for those of you who want to make perhaps a more informed decision about voting. We'll talk about that. He's the man who shows up if you separate elected officials or remove them from the lists of most admired people. He and two others seem to show up most frequently. That is to say, two other people who are not elected officials. The two others are the Pope and Billy Graham. Not bad company. I am pleased to present the third person. Please welcome Ralph Nader. Mr. Nader.
From Chicago, you're now in touch with Donahue. On today's Donahue, consumer advocate Ralph Nader joins Phil to share information from his 3 unconventional profile reports on presidential candidates, Ronald Reagan, John Anderson, and President Carter.
I don't know how I could have done it so long without thinking. But finally I asked myself, why was I buying pancake mix when I already had Bisquick? Beats me. Bisquick makes terrific pancakes. Light and fluffy, which isn't surprising. There's over 45 years of quality and experience behind every box. And that's gotta mean something. Usually it means second helpings. Really, Bisquick is the only pancake mix you'll ever need.
Bisquick. Something good always comes of it.
Did you know Kool-Aid Unsweetened is still one of the best soft drink values you can find? And that's including the cost of sugar, even at today's prices. The same amount of soda would cost more than 3 times as much. And it wouldn't have the vitamin C Kool-Aid has, or that special fruity taste that's a real winner with thirsty kids.
Thanks, Mom.
You loved it as a kid, you trust it as a mother. Kool-Aid brand unsweetened soft drink mix.
First to Papagallo, then back to school. You'll find everything you need from head to toe at the shop for Papagallo. Plenty of perky Papagallo shoes, plus docksiders and penny loafers. There are also lawns nightgowns, tons of sweaters and matching turtlenecks, cords, khakis, and blazers. Everything you'll need for a great year. First to Papagallo, then back to school, in style. That's the shop for Papagallo, Cricket West Shopping Center, West Central Avenue, 1 block east of Secor, where you'll fall in love with Papagallo.
Now at Eye Care Associates, 40% off all frames, and Bausch & Lomb soft contact lenses are $139 complete, including lenses, thermal care kit, and all professional fees. No additional charges. At Eye Care Associates, you're always a patient, never just a customer. Located on Airport Highway west of McCord, call 866-9329 for your professional appointment.
Ralph Nader is with us, and his group is responsible for a citizen guide to the 1980 election. Let me show you this. How many pages will this be?
It'll be, in words, it'll be about 140,000 words.
All right, this is then the profile on all the candidates.
That's right, it'll be out in September.
Okay, the point here is to try and make voters more informed.
Right.
Okay.
Not only more informed, more involved, and to begin to shape the way the election proceeds.
Okay, it's hard for me to imagine, Mr. Nader, that if your consumer activists prepared this, that there wouldn't be some judgment included in this. In other words, does Ronald Reagan really fare well in this review?
Let me tell you what it is. Most of the candidates will tell you only good things about them, obviously, and that's what most of the American people receive, their beams from the candidates. What we're trying to do is develop a critical profile on each one of them, so that people who like them are quoted, people who are critical of them are quoted, and the ideas are bounced off one another.
Yeah.
Also, there are a lot of documented material in terms of how they voted. Just how they voted. They voted for this, they voted against that, when they were governor, president.
But if the Reagan people are a little nervous, they're certainly to be understood. I mean, for you to be putting out a profile on Ronald Reagan is a little bit like the Masons reviewing the Knights of Columbus, isn't it?
Well, no, I think the way it reads...
I mean, you're not upset by the question. You are, you know, people perceive the consumer activist as a liberal guy who supports OSHA and regulatory agencies and all that government do-goodism.
And law and order for corporations, that's right. Terrible things like that.
Your point is what?
The point is, well, you see, here's an interesting point. When we say, for example, Reagan did this as governor, Reagan didn't do that as governor, those are facts. Some people may think that what he did was good. Some people may think that what he did was no good.
And you present without judgment what he did.
Very well footnoted. Very well footnoted. Also, we have a list of questions that each candidate would prefer not to answer. To frame some of the major issues that they're trying to dodge.
I like that. I mean, do you have recall on this? What would be a question, example of that?
Well, for instance, President Carter stated repeatedly in 1976 he would never decontrol old oil and let the price of old oil in the U.S. go to the OPEC price. In April 1979, he did decontrol it, and it'll mean about $1,300 per family of four and higher petroleum prices. Now, that's not a question he's going to like to answer. Governor Reagan tries to parade himself as a tax cutter. Actually, taxes shot up tremendously when he was governor of California. So did welfare costs. So there's a contrast between what he's telling people around the country and what he actually did as governor. John Anderson goes around the country now raising questions on nuclear power. Yet for 10 to 12 years, he was nuclear power's greatest and most forceful advocate in the House of Representatives. It's important to ask them their questions, separate the deeds from the words, the expediency from their own experience when they were not running for election or before they were elected.
Yeah. I mentioned in the introduction, your introduction, that 54% of the people voted. It's almost getting, we're weary of being scolded for how much we apparently don't care about our own democracy. I'm not sure exhortation works.
Well, involvement works. It's like anything else. People now are described as cynical about politicians. They're turned off. What difference does it make who's being proposed? Well, it doesn't make as much difference as it should, but it makes a lot of difference. Who's going to be the president of the United States? And we have the lowest voting turnout in the Western world. I mean, in some other countries, it's 80%, 90%.
In some other countries, it's against the law not to vote, isn't it?
Yeah, in Australia, you have to go to the polls in Australia. You don't have to vote. You could vote for yourself. You could just put the piece of paper in the box with nothing on it. But you do have to show up. It's considered a duty of citizenship, like jury duty.
That probably would be unconstitutional here.
It would require a constitutional amendment, yes.
In other words, one of the freedoms of our democracy is the freedom not to give a damn.
That's true. And if too many people exercise that freedom, most of us may lose that freedom.
Right.
It's one of those paradoxes.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a moment. You know, instead of running around forming all these agencies to keep us good, maybe there's something can be said for letting the whole thing go to hell, pardon the profanity, in the sense of the evolution of civilization, in the sense that we'll learn our lesson, that we'll, in a painful way, grow. In the same way the American revolutionaries decided they would have to sustain a certain amount of pain in order to establish their own independence.
Yeah, it's really too late for that. We're not all living on prosperous farms 20 miles from one another. We're living in places where pollution invades the health of people, where people no longer will want to look forward to old age without kind of social security. They want that kind of security. We're dealing with a dangerous world where there are nuclear weapons floating all over. And that's why this appeal to, you know, get government off our backs, get rid of government, is really an appeal to prevent people from gathering together as a community and making the decisions that they could not possibly make individually. For example, you can't really clean up pollution as an individual when the steel plant is 2 miles away and belching forward. The key is to get people to self-govern, to clean up government, to make it more efficient, to cut it away where it's just representing big power and so on.
The phrase "to get people" has a sort of messianic, manipulative sound to it, that we have to somehow, we who know better, have to get these people to be concerned. There are all kinds of examples in the history of civilization which show that the only thing that really works is when people decide among themselves to do something about it.
Oh,
and nobody gets them to do anything. You can't do that. We're not seals.
But, well, Lexington and Concord, for example, there were a few people who said, let's go. You know, King George has got to go.
And there was a certain will.
Yeah.
There was a certain will that followed that. But I don't see the will except in the circles around the 3 Mile Island plant. You know, I mean, you have an idea how many people show up at an anti-nuclear energy rally in Chicago? And we've got Zion right up the street. I'm not saying this is right. I'm saying this is reality.
Well, no, 200,000 people showed up in New York, and they've got Indian Point, 26 miles north of Manhattan. I mean, you can't expect all people to be interested in all things, but what we can expect is that a small number of people, citizens around the country, will take an interest, like in nursing home, or in cleaning up City Hall, or in tax reform, or in consumer justice. In other words, we really have to persuade ourselves that citizenship is going to take a piece of our time. That it's a duty, along with working in the office or plant or raising children or engaging in leisurely activities. Is it too unreasonable to say to people that over the next 3 months they take 5 or 6 hours at a time and study the record of the major presidential candidates, study who is going to be the next president, study how to involve themselves, get together and say to Reagan or Anderson or Carter, you're coming into Chicago, you're coming into St. Louis. Here's the way we'd like you to campaign. We'd like you to meet at the local high school auditorium and answer questions, and it'll be put out over cable or over TV or radio live. Instead of letting the candidates sweep through with their advanced people, kiss a few babies at shopping malls, go to the country fair, get on a TV program, do a rubber chicken circuit at the local Hilton Hotel, and then they're off, you see?
You know, accompanying that observation, this point is a little unnerving. Every candidate, in order to run today, for any major office, you've got to have a pollster. I mean, it just goes with, you got to have a pollster. Used to be you had to have a horse to get to the next town and ask them to vote for you. And think about this now. The pollster's mission is to find out what the people want, and then come back and tell the candidate what the people want. Then the candidate goes out and tells the people what they want. Now, the problem with that is there are no cutting edges. Nobody takes an unpopular stand. Nobody takes a controversial stand. And the ultimate bottom line of this technique of campaigning is this: every candidate is saying this: I'm going to increase the defense budget, I'm going to provide jobs for everybody who's out of work, and I'm going to cut taxes. And they've been doing that since the founding of this republic, and we just seem to sit here and let it happen.
Yeah, it's sort of like sugar. I mean, people have got to say to their political candidates, we want nutrition, we don't want sugar. And that's why, I mean, the dilemma that you just posed is made possible by a lot of people not caring about getting involved in the political electoral process or getting informed about candidates. Also made possible because there are a lot of money going into campaigns from special interest groups, and they want a payback.
Yeah. You're putting this out yourself, huh?
Yeah.
$6.50?
Yes. It's cheaper than Donahue's hardback.
Why does it have to be that expensive? Why? You got me, all right? Why does it have to be $6.50? Now, this will be a semi-soft bound, you know, one of those with kind of the cheap, near newspaper type paper. No, I'm not, this is not, I'm not denigrating the book. I'm saying that that does sound like a lot of money. Are you going to make a buck with this?
We are going to use the proceeds. It goes to a non-profit group, Public Citizen.
Which somebody will be able to audit and all of that?
Oh,
okay.
yeah, sure.
Well, who's watching you? That's not a bad question.
It's all filed. It's all open. Yeah.
Okay.
We have all kinds of... You know, someone once said, who can make you accountable? I say, well, General Motors, the Treasury Department, trade associations, private detectives hired by corporations.
But you have not, you don't have a history of enthusiastically running to investigative reporters with all of the financial records of the organizations that you have helped to found.
Oh, they're all on public file. First of all, our resources are so modest. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, if we were running to the reporters, we'd say, look how modest our resources are.
Your point.
As I was saying, what we want to try to do is not only get this report out to school and public libraries and teachers who want to focus on the election with their students and League of Women Voters people and labor union locals and so on, but to the voters. I'd really like to see voters sit down in their neighborhood and really have discussions on their candidates. So when the candidates roll into town, they're ready with the questions, they're ready, they're informed, or when they go to the ballot box. And that's what we want to try to encourage over the next few weeks. A new way of citizens involving themselves, regardless of what they call themselves, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Citizen Party, whatever.
Why don't you have one of those big shot paperback houses publish this, and we get it in every airport in the country, every drugstore? You know how.
Here's the most fascinating thing. You know what's on the newsstands, right? Science fiction, love stories, detective stories, the pulp paperbacks. And you can see them all the time. The paperback companies say that a book, a paperback book, on the presidential candidates, who is going to run this country in the White House come next year, wouldn't sell. And that means...
They're probably right.
That means that they don't think they could sell 150,000 copies of information about who's going to be the next president to a market of over 200 million Americans. And I don't want to believe that. I mean, I really don't. I would like to think they're wrong. But there's got to be something done to make the political process open to people, interesting to people, and not viewed as a chore or not a subject of cynicism. You know, I think it's time to become cynical about cynicism. It's too easy just to say, well, they're all the same, they're all corrupt, and so on. Because if we don't do anything about it, the country's going to go right over the brink, obviously.
There are a lot of people feel that it's time to become cynical about you and other public interest people who have surfaced. You certainly are the most famous, and you have your own singular reputation. And I guess I want to know do you understand the anger that may be directed at you by, for example, the small businessman who is overwhelmed with government forms, many of which are duplicative, many of which require him to hire extra people when he's already got a profit margin that's diminishing because of inflation, not to mention diminishing market. And here comes Nader with both guns out and with a passion and a singular focus, which would be the envy of an evangelist, coming in there and demanding...
Is that the way I strike you, Bill?
That's the way you strike the people against whom your energy is directed.
Our work is to defend small business. I mean, first of all, small business is really what built the country. If you want us to talk about business, I mean, labor built the country too. But I think Our country's strength comes from small business, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, not so much from the giant
But he wants the government off his back, and he sees you as the guy who's calling for the government to get on his back.
There isn't that much. You take even Ronald Reagan's figures about paperwork and hours, you divide it by the number of businesses in the country, it runs under 10 hours a year. A lot of it is filling out tax forms. It's been wildly exaggerated. We have worked to try to get some of the duplicated forms out, and there are some duplicated forms. But you know, one thing business wants from government, they want statistics and data. And to get statistics and data, forms have to be filled out by the Census Bureau and the Department of Commerce.
Well, for what businesses want that? Not every business wants statistics.
People who want projections of population shifts, who's in what neighborhood, sales projections, what occupations are in need of.
So you're saying that the people complaining about hyper-extended government are the people who are demanding government service?
Yeah, they want the service, but they don't want to collect the data for it.
Okay.
And the country has got to have good data. I mean, the census, as you know, is a $100 million operation.
David Broder is out with a book titled Changing of the Guard, in which he talks about the new people who are going to run this shop for the next couple of years. And there's a whole chapter in there on the do-gooders, the public interest people. One of the points made in there is that, and I've heard this from we've had some of the big giants of industry on right in that chair. They see you and your colleagues as the naysayers, the people who come in and make these charges that require all kinds of research. If you say to me that my show is doing something wrong, I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, and it takes me a while to respond to your charge. You shoot at their feet and then run. And they're left with all this bad press and not a real opportunity to respond to it.
First of all, we don't run. What we try to get them to do is put in new technology that will save people money and save people's lives. The airbag's a perfect example of that. Majority of the people polled repeatedly, even GM's polls, show that people want the security that when they are in a crash, if somebody strikes them or the car goes out of control, instead of going through glass, steel, and hard plastic inside the car, they go into a nice soft airbag and walk away. That saves money, because death and injury on the highway is very costly to people and the economy. And of course, it saves lives and prevents injuries. That's not being a naysayer. That's saying to industry, be more proud of yourself. Liberate your auto engineers who already know how to build these cars in a much safer way.
Right. What are you saying publicly about the attitude of labor? And if my car doesn't work, it may be because it was put together by a guy who was more interested in his John time than he was in the quality of the work he was doing.
Well, it's really fascinating.
And why don't you train your big guns on
Well, first of all, we do. We have been quite critical, and we've been engaged in reform movements. United Mine Workers in the 60s. We've criticized labor, particularly labor leaders, for being out of date, for not paying enough attention to worker health and safety. There are not enough women at the heads of labor union committees. For example, I don't think there's one woman on the AFL-CIO board, even at this date, and yet 35% of the working force now are women. But it's interesting, you noted that the head of Firestone, John Nevin, just recently said, these were his very words, he said, all the recalls that I have heard of in the United States in the last 10 years, product recalls like cars and radar ranges, not one is due to the worker on the assembly line. It's all managerial and engineering deficiencies. And I was stunned when I heard it, and so were other people. But this man headed Zenith, he was high up in Ford Motor Company, vice president, and now he's the head of Firestone Tire and Rubber Company, and he made that statement. This isn't to exonerate sloppy work at the assembly level. It is to say we shouldn't exaggerate that at all.
You just said that the organized labor has very few women in power. You see, how many women are in power in your shop?
We have many.
You also made a big song and dance about the failure of DuPont, for example, to hire minorities.
Yeah.
How many minorities work for Ralph Nader?
That's a good point. Let me start with women. First of all, we've had women heading our groups, like heading Congress Watch. There's a woman now heading Congress Watch. But they tend to get very good offers because they're so good. One of them is now head of the Auto Safety Agency.
Joan Claybrook.
Yeah, right. But there are really major opportunities in all our groups for women. Now, the minorities, quite interesting. Many minority students out of law school and medical school and else, they want to go in to the regular profession. They want to make their mark in the profession. They want to be corporate lawyers. They want to, if they want to go into reform, they'll go into areas like civil rights, police brutality, tenant rights, legal services. What we work in is the corporate regulatory area, Food and Drug Administration, auto safety, campaign finance reform.
We just had a big elevator scandal here in one of the high-rise projects here in Chicago where a child was killed because the door was mechanically deficient. That's the kind of thing you have railed against for years. Why can't we have a minority person banging on the doors of public housing projects to make sure that they are environmentally safe? And to suggest that they this or they that has a certain stereotype about it. You know,
let me finish. You didn't let me finish. What we're trying to do is get minority law school graduates to realize that the issue is the power of corporations, the power of the landlords that have to be changed wholesale, reform. You can't really change it just by representing poor tenants, because you can represent 80,000 tenants in 1 year and there'll be 100,000 at the doorstep the next year. You got to go and reform the landlord lease. You got to reform the ability of people to file class actions. You've got to reform the campaign.
And the reason there aren't minority people trying to reform those things is what?
They haven't yet attracted themselves to that wholesale power issue. They are so concerned with Main Street USA, with the victims. And it's something, you know what it's like? It's like a doctor treating a malarial patient, which has to be done, rather than doctors cleaning up the malarial pools and eradicating the mosquitoes.
All right, but again, my question is, why don't we have more minority doctors cleaning up the malarial pools?
Well, first you got to get more minority medical students into schools.
That's right, but that's exactly what the fat cats say to me when I ask them why we don't have more black people in those gray suits, you know, with the watch fobs that they put in the annual report in the boardroom. Why don't we see more minority?
One reason is the standardized testing system, which is a class-biased system, the multiple choice standardized testing system. That's one very serious reason. Another is money. $10,000, $12,000 now to go to medical school for 1 year. In Georgetown University, it's about up to $15,000.
All right, but just to reverse it, not to belabor this, but for you to get up and you get a lot of media attention, and all the microphones are in front of you, and you'll say DuPont this, or Exxon that, or Mobil this, and that's it, and then the reporters for all that, and boom, Nader is gone. What's to prevent those people against whom you've railed so much from holding their own press conference, releasing their own report about the nature of the Ralph Nader organization in Washington and how many Hispanics you have, how many blacks, how many women, who's in power, and then they're going to leave and they'll sell their book to anybody who wants to buy it.
Well, they do that all the time with us. I mean, there are hundreds of trade groups in Washington who spend a lot of time watching the consumer movement, the environmental movement.
But if they did that to you, you would be... You'd be out with the fastest release. The ink wouldn't be dry on the mimeograph.
No, they've done it. They've done it, Phil. I have a standing offer to any chief executive of any corporation. That includes Irving Shapiro or the head of Exxon or any chief executive. That I'll let them come and spend a month or 2 months in our organization if they let me spend a month or 2 months in their organization. Just roam the halls, you know? Open the files, look in, everything.
We'll be back in just a moment.
Is it time for baby's first pair of shoes? Then let Merle's Footwear show you baby shoes by Buster Brown. Start baby out in a pair of Buster Browns. For 75 years, Buster Brown has been the name in baby shoes. And for 40 years, Merle's Footwear has been the store for conscientious fitting. Fitting experience has no substitute, and Merle is a specialist who cares. He does all the fitting at Merle's Footwear, 3455 Stickney, near Manhattan.
My darlings, what good is a furniture sale when I don't know what I want? Can't make up my mind. But not anymore. At Commodore House in Perrysburg, they plan everything to satisfy my whim and my budget. I can find savings of up to 20% on Hardin and Henderson upholstery, and savings of up to 50% on floor samples. I love Commodore House in Perrysburg, my darlings. They're small enough to care.
Angie, spaghetti sauce from a jar with Papa here. Taste. That's Italian.
She cooked spaghetti just for you, Tony.
Sauce from a jar?
Taste, Sergeant Ronaldo.
That's Italian.
Ah, it's Italian. Sauce out of a jar for my mother?
Taste.
Hey, that's Italian. That's Italian.
All-natural ragu spaghetti sauce. That's Italian.
I just came back from shopping. Got some beautiful things for my outside and some special things for underneath. Because to look right on the outside, you have to fit right underneath. And that's just what a visit to Kate and Maine's intimate apparel shop can do. They make it their business to fit you right. Professionally fitted foundations for the clothes you're wearing every day. And for custom dresses, bridal gowns, or figure problems. Bras and girdles that move when you move. And lots more from Kate and Maine's intimate apparel shop. Central at Talmadge, Ottawa Hills.
Okay, you said that you'd like us to buy your books so we can be prepared to ask the presidential candidates questions, but how much accessibility does the average person really have to the president?
They do a lot of street corner stuff, you know. You got to say this. For all of our electronic razzle-dazzle, these candidates are showing up in high school gymnasiums.
Not in Park Forest.
No,
it's true. They're not going to get everywhere.
Not enough. Most of the time that they call meeting the people is just shaking hands, saying nice to know you, and going shaking hands at a county fair or something. You're right. A group of citizens, citizen groups, say in St. Louis or Kansas or anywhere, should get together and send a letter to the candidate and say, you're coming through our city in the coming weeks before the election. Here's what we'd like you to do in terms of spending your time. We have a high school auditorium already, and it will have the following issues to be discussed and a representative sample of people from the community. So you can have a discussion rather than just backslapping or, shaking hands. I think you're right. I think the quality of the interchange between candidates and the people can be upgraded by the people in the communities themselves.
Yes, ma'am. You'll stand, please.
It said that there's a collegiate system that has already voted for the president, and that...
You mean the Electoral College?
They've already voted for the president, correct? What does our vote matter if they've already decided which...
You don't believe that now, do you?
Yes, I do.
You mean there's some sort of underground that's already over? Who won?
Watch TV.
Who won?
I don't know. It's probably Carter.
You think Carter won because he manipulated the...
I'm not saying anybody manipulated. I'm just wondering, does our vote really count? Or is it already voted? Should we go there and bother?
No, the electors have not. They only vote in accordance to the way the vote is tabulated in each state. By the way, Phil, technically they could repudiate the people's votes, but I think it's only been done once or twice in the last 80 years by one elector.
In other words, they are not constitutionally bound to honor the majority vote of the people.
They could, but they never, 99.9%.
Let me just try this one more time with you, Mr. Nader. Do you have any admiration, or do you have any positive feelings in your soul about conservative philosophy and principles?
Oh, yeah. Let me define conservative.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Let me try.
Well, I mean, conserving...
No, I'm talking about that loyal American who believes the government is too big, too wasteful, too paternalistic, is given to handouts, that the government should not be printing pamphlets that tell you how to ride a bicycle.
That makes me a conservative, because we've been fighting all those things, except the last one. In other words, we are fighting corruption, waste, way before some of these more heralded conservatives even thought of doing so.
Yeah, but here's the impression that the conservative community has about you and others.
Because most of them aren't really conservatives. They're corporatists, these corporate spokespeople.
What they're saying is that you're out there saying that you're speaking out for the public interest, and we have to accept your definition of the public interest, a questionable proposition in itself. And that in effect your attitude seems to be unspoken, and in parenthesis is, you Americans just don't know what's good for you. So we're going to create a lot of agencies to make sure that you are protected from yourself. And in the business of creating all these do-good agencies, you are increasing the cost of government, making it more difficult to make a profit, and not allowing the good old-fashioned free enterprise system to work its own way. And the invisible hand of Adam Smith is not...
You know, like the Chrysler bailout by the U.S. taxpayer. Is that what you mean, Phil? Good old free enterprise system? If the American taxpayer realized how many billions of dollars of the small taxpayer's money is going to Washington recycled out to subsidize this industry and bail out that company. I think that would be a major political issue in the campaign. The key thing is
Ralph Nader prepared to go to Detroit and condemn the Chrysler bailout to 30,000 families who, at least, we already have more than 30,000 Chrysler people unemployed, out of work, we hope temporarily.
No,
you understand my question.
I understand. The Chrysler problem was Chrysler mismanagement right at the top. They didn't build the kind of cars people wanted, and they misjudged the market and all the rest of it. But you don't solve the problem by rewarding corporate mismanagement. There are other ways to deal with the worker problem, worker hardship. That's a much more stable way, because Chrysler is not going to make it, in my judgment.
Every time you pass an environmental law or a consumer protection law, then you've got to pay the people who enforce it. You've got to pay the judges who have to hear the case when the guy who comes on and says, "I'm not guilty," is not. The fan worked when I was there, and we were doing real well before all these do-gooders. And now his profits are diminishing, he claims. You've got to pay the bureaucrats, 40,000 people in the Department of Energy. Are you going to ring a clarion call in favor of that?
Oh, no one would apologize for the Department of Energy. That is what's called Exxon's wholly owned subsidiary in Washington. Let me just give you a counterweight to what you said. You know, it's amazing when you deal with abstractions. Like someone can stand up and say, "We've had enough government bureaucracy. We got to get government red tape off our back." Someone else stands up and said, "There's too much crime, white-collar crime, too many consumer rip-offs. We got to have the police apply a little law and order to the big fat cats." See, they both sound pretty interesting. How do you resolve it? By getting down to the facts, to the victims. The Environmental Protection Administration's mission is health. It's supposed to try to curtail pollution, reduce the level of lung cancer and emphysema and other forms of cancer. The role of the auto safety agency is to reduce...
But reasonable men are disagreeing on what is causing it. And what, in other words, you can make this wonderful sweeping condemnation that must be corrected, but you don't have to, as the politician does, deal with the nitty-gritty, painful business of choosing from unpleasant alternatives. All you have to do is make the charge. And it has also been suggested that in making the charge, you look like this armored Lancelot coming in to save the... But if you're in public office or if you're running a company, whether or not you put something on your smokestack is not exclusively a matter of the environment. It may have to do with the survival of your company, not to mention the livelihood of the workers who
the laws take all of that into account, and the political reality of the influence of the corporations take it more into account. I mean, you can't believe how weakly these health and safety laws are enforced. In the last 10 years, there hasn't been a major safety standard applied to the automobiles. Maybe the airbag in the 80s will be. You can't believe how much lawlessness and violation of health and safety standards resulting in people dying, being injured, increasing disease. Look at the Love Canal situation. Look at the contamination of our drinking water because chemical companies threw in thousands of places deadly chemicals which are seeping into the groundwater, which is the source of a lot of drinking water. This isn't a matter of compromise, Phil. The public is being sold out by its own representatives in Washington 80% of the time. All they're getting are little tidbits from these laws, little tidbits. And what we're trying to do is say, if law and order is good to fight street crime, law and order is good to fight the crime in the executive suites.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
Hello. I've never met you before, have I?
No.
Then why do I have your wallet? I see you're wearing Ward's Best T-shirt. A package of 3 T-shirts, athletic shirts, or briefs is just $4.99. They're all pure cotton and Sanford treated to keep their shape. For boys back to school, Ward's Cotton Cordell polyester T-shirts and double-seated briefs. 3 for just $2.97. There's magic in the air. And Ward's!
Ralph Thayer Volkswagen Mazda Monroe's Magic Mileage Center presents Small Wonders, featuring a fantastic selection of Rabbits, Dashers, and Scirocco's, plus a full line of magnificent Mazda GLCs, 626s, and RX-7s. See how much money you can save by shopping for your small car. You'll say it's a small wonder more and more people are coming to Ralph Thayer. Take I-75 North to Erie Temperance Exit 2 and follow Dixie Highway to Ralph Thayer Volkswagen Mazda, just 20 minutes from downtown Toledo.
Watch Harry's new work shirt.
My new shirt.
And amazing Lest oil. Clean the house. First, kitchen corners.
My poor shirt.
Tough bathroom dirt. Even a greasy car engine.
You owe me a shirt, Martha.
Now watch Lest oil. Clean the shirt. Clean the house.
Wow.
See?
Next time we use your dress. Super strength Lest oil. And for rugs, Lest oil deodorizing rug shampoo. Cleans and deodorizes, even pet smells.
Make your next evening out a special event at N Japanese Steakhouse. N Japanese Steakhouse, Monroe at Talmadge, Toledo.
More from Ralph Nader when Donahue returns, following these messages.
If the high cost of living is keeping you up nights, then relax in the Arizona from the Waterbed Company. For a limited time, the Arizona is just $199, complete with king or queen size mattress, liner, heater, in a stained and lacquered frame with headboard. Get a great night's sleep on the Arizona from the Waterbed Company. But hurry, at $199, they won't last long. The Arizona, $199, and financing is available from the affordable waterbed store, the Waterbed Company in Westgate Meadows, Toledo.
What flavor? Tastes like Mama Margarine now. From America's #1 butter maker.
Wanted. Diamonds and gold. Hockenberger and Company wants to buy diamonds and gold. Call for an appointment. Hockenberger and Company, 1514 South Detroit at Glendale.
Take a swing for scholars during the University of Toledo Alumni Association's Hole-in-One Tournament.
A look at a killer Wednesday night on 13 Strong.
The presidential profiles about which Ralph Nader spoke a moment ago are yours for $6.50. I assume if you include a check. If you write to Post Office Box 19404, Washington, D.C., the zip is 20036. That's Post Office Box 19404, Washington, D.C. The zip code is 20036. The profiles, as shown here, include voting records and, according to Mr. Nader's testimony, non-judgmental.
They focus, by the way...
Non-editorial information.
They focus heavily on domestic issues. Domestic issues, not foreign policy.
Right. Do you believe in wage and price controls?
In certain extreme situations, yeah.
Do you think we have such an extreme situation now?
Right now, no, but if it stayed at 18% inflation and going up to 2022, there has to be a breathing period, which wage and price controls would give us.
Knowing what you know about the president, all the president candidates, who are you going to vote for?
Yeah. You're asking this of a man who served as umpire for a Jimmy Carter softball game in Plains, Georgia.
Struck him out, too. I have not made up my mind yet. I know who I'm not going to vote for, but I've not made up my mind yet. But even if I did, I wouldn't say, because traditionally I have kept my vote private, because I want to focus people on the process, on the facts, on how to get there, rather than just say, well, here's my preference for what it's worth.
Here's a solution for air and water pollution.
What is the solution?
I have a solution.
Oh,
the smokestacks have to be routed through the executive offices. And the drinking water comes upstream.
You know, there's
circled.
I think the point you're making is an important one, which is that if executives had to be exposed to what people in the neighborhood or people in the mines or what have you are exposed to, they'd have a greater sensitivity, and they wouldn't be so rarefied and air-conditioned offices. There was a fellow called the Fox near Chicago a few years ago. He would block the pipes at night of some of these water polluters, and it would all back up into the plant. They never caught him, but I think that's what he was trying to convey, that if you're part of the best way to be part of the solution is to be exposed to the problem.
Being in education, I wonder what level your profile is written on. Reading level, can people really understand what you're saying? The average American.
Oh yes, well, I mean, it's not condescending at all. It's written clearly, factually, well documented. There's some cartoons, some graphics. It isn't something you got to read with a magnifying glass. And I think also be interesting to high school students and junior high school students. Somehow they tend to be very interested in elections.
Somehow they seem not to vote. I'm talking about 18 and over.
18
the younger population is failing to vote with greater numbers than the older people.
True, exactly.
I work for a large company, and I will never believe what you said about that the problems are because of the executive up at top, because if you ever tried working with unions, I think you should probably turn around and look at the unions more.
Tell me what.
Let me.
It is very hard to get anything changed in a company, and I think sometimes maybe with the automobile industry.
Among the unions?
Yes, it's really hard. If you had to redefine a job situation, you wouldn't believe what you would have to go through. And I think a lot of the problems, too, are starting up there. I mean, I've seen it. You know, it's not in the automobile industry, but still with a large company.
You're not inaccurate. Here's my point. First of all, a lot of the major recalls, like car recalls, are due to engineering design problems in the blueprint or the construction layout. So that's what the head of Firestone was talking about. And he also applied it to his own tire, by the way, the Radio 500. He didn't blame that on the workers. Secondly, it's important to note that even though workers may mess up a product, he was saying the responsibility of management was to make sure that product was caught through the quality control checkout process before it went to market and the consumer. It is, I think, important to note that the management has got the control of that product. And if they have to fire workers who are sabotaging, they should be able to do so. And some of these work rules, as you indicate, are really far too restrictive.
I'd like to know how you feel about the open convention that was just voted down.
Which convention?
How did you feel about the Kennedy effort to open the convention with quotes around open?
Oh, well, I think that if you're going to have a primary system, and the delegates should reflect the primary results on the first ballot, then they can change after that.
Then why have a convention?
I think primarily to get on the networks is why they have the convention.
Right. Well, but it's not working because nobody's watching. As you know, the non-convention channels attracted a considerably larger audience than the 3 network channels.
Yeah, but when all 3 networks preempt all the shows, then if you're going to watch television, you've got to watch the conventions.
Yes, Mr. Nader, how many people work for you in your organization, and what are their backgrounds? And the second question is, who pays your salary?
Okay. We have a very small number. We have 80 full-time people. We have some student interns, some volunteers. I'd say about 30 of them are young lawyers, a few years out of law school. They're researchers, writers, some technical people, some health specialists.
Yeah. Broder makes the point in his book that all you guys are from Yale except you. You're a Harvard guy.
As a matter of fact, Yale is not very well represented in our groups. No,
well, Mark Green is from
Harvard.
Oh, he's from Harvard.
Yeah. Well, he's not with us anymore. He's running for election. Yeah.
But Yale has done an unusually good job in his analysis in turning out the people who are bringing class action suits, people forcing...
No, not recently. It's quite different. No, we have people now from all over the country. Texas, California, Illinois, Michigan, New York.
We'll be back in just a moment.
If you need dentures but aren't sure you can afford them, the Denture Center can help. A complete exam and necessary x-rays is only $15. Dr. Kenneth J. King and the doctors at the 2 denture centers can provide a complete set of dentures for only $295 or a partial denture for $225. Because all the work is done right here in the Denture Center's own lab, they can also reline or repair your denture the same day. The people at the denture centers want you to save the teeth you have, but if you need dentures, they want you to be able to afford them. The Denture Centers with 2 convenient locations.
When you see well-dressed men and women together, chances are you'll see fine tailored clothing by Hickey Freeman from Dam Schroeder's.
Graham Schroeder's. Clothing of note
For men,
and women.
downtown Toledo,
Perry's Landing,
Starlight Plaza.
Toledo, the glass capital, some great industry, some fine restaurants. One of the best is the Porch of the Maidens. Excellent food, outstanding service. And today, when everyone is raising in prices, we're holding them down. And now, the Porch is introducing a brand new concept called Early Fare. Visit the Porch anytime between 4 and 6:30 p.m. and take advantage of the Early Fare menu with its smaller portions and smaller prices. Visit the Porch on the Central Avenue Strip.
Now is the time to redecorate your home for the holidays and protect your house from the weather ahead. Now through September 6th, Valet Paint is offering 25% off quality Pratt & Lambert paints. That's 25% off manufacturer's list price on selected Pratt & Lambert exterior and interior products at Valet Paint. Choose from these superior Pratt & Lambert sale products and your painting projects will come through with flying colors. That's 25% off at all 3 convenient Valet Paint locations.
The woman had asked where you get your money.
Right, so I'm self-employed, and nobody pays my salary.
Well, but where's the money come from? I mean, you got to eat. I assume you're still a part of the. You're immortal.
I write, I lecture, but I don't spend very much. I mean, I'm a real inflation fighter.
Yes, but
most of the funds that go to the cause of it.
I understand that, but do you vacation? Do you, you know? I know you don't own a car, but do you spend any money at all on leisure? You're going to have to bear up with these personal questions.
A few movies once a year. You know, nothing much. Well, when you work all the time, you like your work. What do you? You know, there's no mark between leisure and work.
All work and no play make Ralph a dull crusader.
Well, look, I went to Australia and New Zealand for a couple of weeks, not as a vacation, but to spread the consumer movement.
And succeeded in upsetting some people over there.
Yeah,
I want to know what.
Some of them didn't like. The Prime Minister of New Zealand didn't like it at all.
How does the average citizen go about getting a complaint against a product or a company?
Heard, you mean, a complaint heard? There's several ways. One way is to, first of all, to know how to write a letter that's effective. There are some paperbacks out that really how to complain effectively to the head. Always go to the head of the company. Don't mess around with the dealer or whatnot. Go right to the head of the company. Send a copy to some senator representative that's known as a consumer advocate, just to make sure that they know, the company knows that other people know about your complaint. Try small claims courts. There are some consumer complaint groups around that deal with auto lemon complaints and others in various cities.
And Carbon U.
Yeah.
Send you a carbon.
Yes. Also, there's some city consumer protection offices that are good. New York City, for example, Cleveland are better than some of the others. And there are television reporters who specialize in consumer news.
Action Line type.
Action Line in the newspaper. There are a lot of these alternatives. You got to try the best ones.
I understand that you're self-employed, but where does your organization get its funding?
We mostly from people around the country who we send in the mails messages to, and they send us $15 or more. There's some gifts. Some people give us bequests, some foundation funds, but mostly it's thousands of Americans who give us $15, $20 a year. And we're very gratified. And I want to thank the people who have helped us, who are watching this program. They make it all possible.
How does a voter register their complaint about a candidate? I mean, if you don't want to vote for any of the candidates, what is the best way to do it other than not vote?
Excuse me, I got to answer this. Run yourself.
What's
wrong with that?
There are several ways. If you don't like the major candidates, you can vote for a third or fourth party candidate. For example, there's a Citizens Party, Barry Commoner's running on it, energy and environmental platform, or there's a Libertarian Party.
Yeah, but that effectively throws your vote away.
All right, but someday people have to face up to it, that they're no longer going to tolerate two parties telling them, well, you got to vote for one of us, you got to vote for the least of the worst. And there comes a time when other political parties are going to have to get more support, if only to shape up the major two parties.
Doesn't it trouble you that the League of Women Voters is going to use a poll to determine who gets in those debates?
Yeah.
I mean, why don't we just wait till November and on the morning of the election call Yankelovich and see who the next president is?
If that's true, that's unfortunate. What they should do is say all candidates who are on enough ballots in enough states to theoretically be able to win should participate in the debate.
Talking about the fat cats, I'd like to ask you what you think about the railroad industry. What's going to happen to it?
Or what's happened to it?
Well, I would like to see it very prosperous. I'd like to see the return of passenger railroad service all over the country in a good way. It's also a very energy-efficient way to transport
But
freight.
the conservatives will tell you that when the government gets into the act, what you get is Amtrak and the post office.
But the problem is that Amtrak is built on the railroad tracks built by the private railroad companies who've abandoned passenger service and who condition Amtrak's schedules and operations. What we want is to, I think the biggest thing in transportation today is to modernize our railroads. It's much more efficient, much more safe. We've got the system all over the country, and maybe with the deregulation and the changes now going on in Washington, it'll help.
And we'll be back in a moment.
Guess what, girls? America's #1 butter maker has just introduced a margarine.
Oh, my, a margarine? They wouldn't.
Oh, they did. New Land O'Lakes margarine is here.
But why?
Why? Because it takes a butter company like Land O'Lakes to give you the taste you really want in a margarine. Here, try it.
Mmm, delicious. Ooh, it's the cream of the margarine.
New Land O'Lakes margarine is here. All you other margarines, move over.
Oh, honey, I need hairspray. Could you get me the Final Net?
This White Rain non-aerosol costs less. 25% less.
I wonder how it holds.
Excuse me, but White Rain holds just as long as Final Net. It holds all day. I use it myself.
Holds all day? Costs 25% less. I love going shopping with you.
White Rain non-aerosol. Holds all day. Costs 25% less.
The fine look of Betty Hansen has never been more irresistible than fall 1980. Color, fabric, knits, and texture form a collage of fashions that are smart, elegant, and chic. For daytime or something dressier, order yours at a special showing at Margie Roth's this Friday and Saturday, 10 till 4.
When you go to buy an Amana Radar Range microwave oven, just remember, all microwave ovens are not alike. For example, these Amana Radar Range ovens have an exemption from the federal regulation requiring a safety warning label. No other company in the world can make this claim. After tests like this, and this, there was no leakage in excess of federal standards. Amana Radar Range, the first microwave oven with a memory, now with RotoWave cooking system.
Available at Appliance Center, Anthony Wayne Trail at Detroit, and Cliff Clark Incorporated, 4102 Monroe.
If you would like a written transcript of today's program, send $2.50 in check or money order to Donahue Transcripts, Box 2111, Cincinnati, Ohio 45201. Include the subject or the name of the guest with your request.
The profiles about which we spoke, which detail the voting records, statements, positions of the three major presidential candidates. We use that adjective much to the concern of the Libertarian Party and others. But we have Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, and John Anderson. And the book is 650, this compilation of information about the candidates, which is intended to make you a more informed voter. I'm sorry, we're out.
That's all right. I just want to know if anybody can answer why commodities in the store, for instance, have to be, the price increase goes not only 1 cent or 2 cents, it's always 10 or 20 cents. Every time something raises in price, it's so high.
Yeah, it just jumps up. I have a brilliant answer to that question, but I see we won't have time to give it. I don't mean to diminish your question. It's an important one. I'm sorry only that we don't have time for an answer. I have time only to say thank you for being with us, and have a nice day, everybody.
Service
services provided and promotional fees paid by the following. The 1980 Ford Mustang. Enjoy the excitement of sports car performance and handling. Mustang, America's most popular sports car.
True Value hardware stores where quality, selection, and service are why they're #1. True Value is more than just a name, it's their way of doing business.